is my video number 4 and actually this is topic 3. Today we'll be discussing continuity and solving few problems on continuity, and then we'll be going to differentiability where we'll discuss the concepts of differentiability, overview over differentiability, and also there's an important topic I want to mention, that is mean value theorem. So watch the full video if you want to gain something on this. Now before going on to solve some problems, I'm writing a concept here, a very important thing, that is continuity of. But before I move on to problems, I want to discuss this thing, continuity of composite functions. So this says if a function, say fx, is continuous at x equals a and g of fx is continuous at f of a, then y equals to g of fx is continuous at x equals 0. So we are already done with the concept of continuity, and we had a clear idea of what is the continuity of a function mean, and so we can understand this easily. That is, if a function fx is continuous at a point say x equals a, and then the composition of g and f, that is g of fx is continuous at f a, then we can say that g of fx is continuous at x equals a. So don't mess these things up, these are in proper order. Remember this order, that you can, that the vice versa is also not true, that f of gx might not be continuous at a. That is not necessary, since then we will be messing up the domains of these functions, and that's not a good thing. So I'll give a problem next on continuity, and then we'll solve the problem on, actually the next problem is based on the continuity of composite functions. So as you can see, there is a problem that says fx equals 1 over 1 minus x, and g of x is f of x, that is f is composed 3 times on itself. So f is composed on x 3 times, then what we need to find? We need to find the points of discontinuity of g. The options are x equals 0 and minus 1, x equals 1 and x equals 0 only, and the last option is x equals 0 and 1. So give it a try, and when you are ready, come back. So I hope you have given it a very faithful try, and now I am going to do this. And from a very glance of this problem, this might seem easy, but there are some common and silly mistakes. So to encounter that, and I have given this problem, so many people, most of us always make those mistakes. So since I don't want you to make those mistakes, so please watch the solution very carefully. Now see, we haven't the domain of fx and gx, nothing about these domains nothing about the domains of these functions have been given. So we need to be careful about that. When we are talking about functions, we always need to be careful about their domains. Domains are the most important part for a function. Also the range is also an important part, but first we must check the domain of the function. Now we haven't been told about the function of the domain of this function. Now very carefully observe that if x is equals 1, then the function will be undefined. So we cannot include 1 in the domain of fx, then otherwise the function will be undefined. Now we don't bother about what the whole domain of that function is, of fx is, but we do know that x cannot be 1. So very very easily we can say that x equals 1 cannot be a, x is equal 1, x equal 1 is always a point of discontinuity. Since x cannot be in the domain of fx, so any of these in the option which include 1, that will be a point of discontinuity of g. Next what we do, we see f of fx. F of fx, that is f composed on fx. That gives us, now in the one when we are composing, the x actually acts as a dummy variable. So we can put fx in place of x, that is 1 by 1 minus x. Now what we get here, simplifying we get So check, are we really getting this? F composed on F, once we get 1 minus x by x. Now see now again we are doing composition 2 times on fx, so we have to check what is the domain of the last composition. So you can see that the second composition, the first composition we do on fx and the 2 times composition on x of by a cannot include 0 in its domain. Check that. Now we cannot have 0, since then it will be undefined, like as in case of the fx. So f of fx cannot have the domain 0. So we already get what point 0 and 1. We always can, if you are eager, then you can do the third time if you want to see. Actually, these aren't included in the options, so you can always keep those options. But still we are doing this. Now when we do this, we get simply 1 minus x minus 1, and that will give us 1. Actually, yes. So this would be x. So this is already always continuous. We know that this is always continuous. X is continuous at all points. So no need to worry about the last gx. So we don't worry about the gx because that is always continuous. So we already got 2 points of discontinuity, that is x equals to 0 and 1. Next up we have a very nice problem which says the value of limit n tends to infinity n factorial over 1 by n to the power 1 by n over n is. The options are 1 over e square, 1 over 2e and 1 over e. So give it a try as usual I said, and then come back when you are ready. So you should have given it a try. This is a very nice problem. Now I'm going to solve it. So suppose say let a is equal limit of n tends to infinity n factorial over 1 by n and n, which is similar to say equivalent as so I took the n power n here and then I took the whole of 1 over 1 by the power of 1 by n. There is no problem. And now we can see this is a problem of fraction is raised to some power. So intuitively what comes to our mind is that we should apply log. So let's just do that. Now we apply log here. Once we apply log, what we get is so the power comes down, as we know in case of log that happens. So log of n factorial by n power n. Now we can write this. This is just manipulation. We can always manipulate something to write in some desired form. We can always write this. You know n factorial. What is n factorial? That is the product of n to 1 in decreasing order. And here we have n power n. So that are n numbers of n. We have got. Okay. Nice. We have got a very nice one. Now what we do? We always know that we can write log of AB equals log of A plus log of B. We know this fact. We know this formula where A and B greater than 0. So here okay, it's tending to infinity, so we don't have to worry. We just write in this simple form. Now we can we write 1 over n. This is nothing but n equals 1. Sorry, this will be r. R equals 1 to n log of r over n. Cannot be like that. So first term will be log of 1 by n plus log of 2 by n. When we add all those and make this and back to this formula, so log of 1 by n plus 2 by n plus 3 by n, those all would make log of 1 into 2 into 3 into up to n, and in the denominator would be all n with n numbers. I mean there are n numbers of n. So that is basically the same thing. As we learn definite integral, then we see this is actually the integral of 0 to 1 log x dx. So we learn definite integral, then we can see that this is nothing but the integral of 0 to 1 log x dx. Now I am going to apply it. So what we got up to here? We got log of a is 0 1 log x dx, and the antiderivative of log x dx is x log x. Take 1 and 0 here. So what we get? X log, sorry, that is x log x minus 1. So the antiderivative of log x dx is x log x minus 1, and taken 1 and 0. So the answer will be, put all these values, we will get 1. Sorry, minus 1. The answer will be minus 1. So log, the value, clearly see that the value of log is minus 1. Not that a is minus 1, but the value of log is a minus 1. So if log a equals minus 1, a must be to the power minus 1. Since log a means log a to the base e. So a equals e power minus 1. The right option is this one. So next up we have another problem that includes the integral. The value of limit x tends to 0, integral of 0 to x squared cos of t squared dt over x minus x sin s is. So the integral is only on this part, that is on the function of t, and x sin s is the denominator, and the whole thing is given in a limit. So we have to find the limit of this whole thing, or function you can say. Now don't worry about seeing this portion. This is integral. So this is of the form, say you have a like this. So this is where f t is cos of t squared, and the integral of 0 to x squared is gx, where gx equals to x squared. So this thing is this, and so we can now move to the solution. And before I move to the solution, I want to say what would be the derivative of this function. Now this is the function. It can be continuous. It can be a constant if this was continuous. This was continuous, constant. But since gx is itself a variable, here is x square itself a variable. So this becomes this thing. This thing becomes a function of x. So this is actually a function of x. Remember this, because actually a function of x square you can say, because the integral is 0 to x square, not a constant number. So this is similar to this thing. So if we differentiate this, we will learn later. If we differentiate in this function, we get f of gx into derivative of gx, that is g dash x. So if we differentiate this function, we get f of gx into g dash of x. Now we need to apply this thing, as we can see in the solution. So moving up to the solution, now check if we put 0 in place of x square, that is the integral of 0 to 0, and this is limit x tends to 0 x sin x. So we know that this limit of x tends to 0, x sin x is 0. We know that, and an integral of 0 to 0, that would make this integral also 0. So the form is 0 by 0. And what that remember? And what that makes us remember is L'Hopital's rule. So we are definitely going to do this and see that g dash x doesn't vanish, and also this satisfies all the conditions to be applied to L'Hopital's rule. So I'm going to do that. Just write this once. What is sin x? So you can see that this is 0 by 0 form, that is the indeterminate form for the L'Hopital's rule, and we can apply that. So differentiating. So as I said, what we do get? Seeing this, I can write we get f of gx. What is f of gx? F of gx means that here f is cos and gx is obviously x squared, as we said. f of t is cos of t square, and gx is x square. So putting that, we get cos of x power 4, because x square raised to the power 2 is cos of, that is x to the power 4, and then derivative of x square, that is 2x. You get that, and differentiating the denominator is very easy. You know that it is x cos x plus sin x. Now again see that if we put x equals 0 in both the numerator and denominator, what will we get? The numerator would be 0 and this would also be 0. So again we get a 0 by 0 form, and we can apply L'Hopital's rule once again. Applying the L'Hopital's rule again, that is differentiating numerator and denominator again, we get that would be 8. And this is minus sine of x power 4, right? And what would be the denominator? Denominator is would be minus x sin x plus cos x and cos x. So basically get this, and can we check now if we apply 0, so what would we get? Now we can put 0, right? See, both these are going to be finite and we won't get an indeterminate form again. So what we get putting 0, we go into cos of 0 minus, that is 0, and this term is 0, this is 1, and again this is cos of 0 is 1. So we get 2 over 2, which is 1. So the correct option is A. Here's another problem, and it actually needs a bit of concept of functions which you have learned in the earlier classes, and also some inequalities. So we'll see that. So what the problem states is, f is a function which is going from r to r, so that is real to real, is a continuous function defined by fx equals 1 over e power x plus 2 into e power minus x. Now we have got the function, we don't know its domain. Its domain is very normal, you see, this be 0. So to become the denominator to be 0, one has to be positive and the other has to be negative. That is very common thing, so that is very natural to see. And we know that this is the exponential of a positive number and it cannot be negative. So it's very clear that the denominator is not 0 at any point. So we are not bothered about the domain of this function at this time, because this is continuous. And it is also mentioned that the function is continuous, so you don't have to worry about the continuity of the function. Now this states, the first statement states is f of c equals 1 over 3, that is 1/3, for some c belonging to real number. And the statement 2 states that the fx is always greater than 0 and less than equal 1 by 2 for all x belonging to R. So here we have got an inequality, and in this case we have got an equality. So how do you solve? Now look at those options. Look at these options first. I want to make clear about these options. So look at these options, because these are very mischievous, I would say. These options, these are methodological technique those JEE paper setters make, so that you make a mistake. So often we have seen statement 1 is true, statement 2 is true. We get the first option as statement 1 is a correct explanation for statement 1. So I have rearranged those. So I have taken that option in the last option. So sometimes we are misguided. So check those options very clearly. And I will be saying what is the real matter of fact after the solution. So hope you have given it a wholehearted try. And now I am going to solve it, and I have to rub the board so that I can solve. I'm just keeping the function. So I think you remember what are the options you have written in your copy, and you also remember the statements, both the statements. And that will be better for you. Because I have no space left in the board. So before we move to first statement, we need to move to the second statement. We are moving to the second statement. So that is, our claim was 0 greater than fx less than fx less than 1 over 2 root 2 less than equal. So we've got this. Now we are going to solve this inequality. So how do we solve? Check that fx equals 1 over e power x plus 2 into e power minus x. We have got this. Now we are going to solve this is greater than 0. So that is very obvious. We already told that this is always going to be greater than 0. The numerator is going to be 0. The whole thing will be positive. And so you can see that is very obvious that fx is greater than 0 for all x, and it cannot be also equal to 0, as I have already said. Now for the second inequality, the right hand side inequality, what would you do? We check this function, that is e power x plus 2 into e power minus x. Now we all know this is also greater than 0, and we have got to give a bound. So if we can give a bound, this is greater than 0, no problem. So if we can give this bound, that this is greater than 2 root 2, we are done. Because both sides are positive, and we can reverse the inequality, we can invert the inequality by taking the reciprocals on both the sides. So we can do that. So now we are going to prove this part. So if we are done that, then it will be very clear. So what can I write? X plus 2 over by e power x, that can be written as e power 2x plus 2 over e power x. And so when we prove those finance inequalities that greater than part, we can always make a whole square. In our school days we have done this, I mean, a lot of times. So take this thing and over this. Since we have got a 2 here, and we have to make the 2 as the square of some number, so that will be root 2. 2 root 2 e power x. Are we getting this form? So we have subtracted this, then we have to add this as well. E power x. So what I did, I subtracted 2 into root 2 of e power x and then added 2 into root of e power x. So you can easily understand what I am trying to do here. I want to make a whole square here. So what is this? To write it here, that is basically e power x minus root 2 whole square. Now why we doing whole square? Because we want to take the positive things, we want to show that is greater than 0 and greater than also. When we are always trying to prove those greater than inequalities, always try to do somehow manipulate those, make those things in small squares or something like that. That would make our work easier, much more easier. In fact, so this is this, and that is a 2 root 2. So what we see here, this part, isn't this always greater than equal 0? Because this can be, if some raised to some power, then e power x can be equal to root 2 and then we get 0. Otherwise we won't get 0. So that is greater than 0, greater than equal 0. This part is always greater than equal 0. Plus 2 root 2, as simple as that. So this part is always greater than 0 and this 2 root 2, so we get a 2 root 2 here. So very nice, we have established the above inequality. So this inequality is established. Now if you remember, the first statement was fc equals 1 over 3 for some c, that is some c is a constant belonging to real numbers. So that was the second statement. That was actually the first statement. We proved the second statement. That is, this is statement number 2 and this is statement number 1. If you remember, if you have written it in copy, then you can know. So this says fc equals 1 by 3. Now how would you know that this is fc equals 1 by 3? Now we observe that f is a continuous function and f belongs to this. So we can write f belongs to f. What is the domain of f? F is belonging to domain of. So by the concept of functions, as I said earlier, so you know that f belongs to the domain, this domain, open 0 and close of 1 by 2 root 2. So since f is continuous, then f must always attain all the values in this. So this is a continuous function and this is also a bijection. So a continuous function is always bijective. Mind that. And since it is bijective, f always need to attain all the values in this domain. So sorry, this is not domain. This is range. This is range of f. So this is the range of f because fx belongs to. So fx, this is the range of f. The range of f we have got is open 0, close of 1 by root 2. And since this is a continuous function, we should attain all the values. Otherwise, the function would have been discontinuous in 1 by 3. And we have said that the function is not continuous at some x equals to say any random value where we get 1 by 3. So that wouldn't happen. Since it is continuous, so if the fx equals to 1 for some c belonging to R. So get this. Now it's worth mentioning that all the problems today we are solving are from either WBJ or from say JE. So no need to worry about the tags of the problem. Those are well searched and all are intriguing problems. So no need to worry about the sources of these problems. Just do with us, and we'll expect will be in a good position when you go to give those competitive examinations. Now going to the problem, what it says, the domain of the function. So you can see f is defined in -5 and close minus 5 5. So that means the domain of f is -5 5. So to get the domain of f, there is a very good information, a very good useful data is given here. We don't need to bother about the domain of the function anymore. So that helps our work, makes our work easier. And how is f given? F is given as fx equals x if x is irrational and minus x if x is irrational. So the function is broken into 2 bits and those bits give us 2 conditions. Now what we need to do, if see the given condition, that is f is continuous at every x except x equals 0. The second option says f is discontinuous at every x except x equals 0. And third option says f is discontinuous everywhere. And last option says f is continuous everywhere. So before even you try it in copy, try to solve it in your mind, because this is a very basic problem and you might not need a copy. If you do it in copy, there is no problem, but you don't need to write. These are all in mind. This is all conceptual based. So I am going to solve it in the conceptual base. I am not going to write much more things here. Now see if we can say. So I am coming to x ladder. X equals 0 ladder and all the other real numbers again fast. So if we say, suppose x a is a real number greater than 0. Sorry, not greater than 0. A is a real number not equal 0. So we can always check the limit. You can check the limit x tends to a of fx. Because we aren't sure about the continuity of the function, because it is in space. The question doesn't say that f is continuous at every a or every rational, every real number in this closed interval. The question doesn't say. We have to find out that. So this is a random real number not equal 0. Obviously, the real number is not equal 0. So any random real number in this domain which is not equal 0. So if x approaches a, what we are going to get the limit of fx. Now you see, this a can be irrational or rational, anything. This can be anything irrational or rational. We can take a as irrational number because all these are real numbers in this domain. I can also take rational number. So what I am trying to say, if we take irrational, suppose if we say irrational this x, we take some approaches. So a is a fixed real number. Now we can vary this x on those small delta neighborhood. So that you might remember I have told in those previous videos, maybe in the first video of the limit and function limits, when I told about the concepts of function limits. So if x varies is in the small delta neighborhood of a, x can be irrational at some point and x can be rational at some another point, and both could be approaching a. So the main concept here to think is both x could be approaching a, but they can be irrational or rational. So that is my point. So we can get minus a or a depending on whatever x we take. So the limit isn't fixed. We aren't getting a unique limit. We are getting both of these limits. So both of these possible, which cannot be possible for the function to be continuous. So we can easily say f is discontinuous everywhere for say every x. Now we don't know about the case of 0. So whatever be the case of 0, when we take limit of x tends to 0 fx, so whatever be the x which is approaching 0, we don't bother, we just put 0, because whenever we put, so you can break those. Suppose so if x is irrational, then also f of x is 0, f of 0 is limit x tends to 0, f of x is 0, and also f of x is 0 when x is irrational. So that doesn't make any change. Whatever be x, we always end up getting put 0 here and we get for with both the same answer. But in case of limit of x tends to a, if that x is irrational, we get limit x tends to a if x is a, and if that x is rational, then f x is limit x tends to a if x is minus. So this cannot happen. These two limits cannot simultaneously exist. So f is discontinuous everywhere. So this can be option no, because we have seen that f is continuous at 0. So f is discontinuous at every x except x equals 0. So as I said earlier, we are having a mixed class on continuity and differentiability. Most of the problems on continuity have been solved, and that was more of a problem solving, and now we move to differentiability. And as I did in case of continuity, we first gave you a glimpse over brief overview over the continuity, and then we moved on solving more problems. So I'll do the same thing with differentiability. I'll first tell you building concepts of our differentiability, our differential function, and graphically how does a function makes it differentiable. So all those building concepts, all those discussion about concept building, so that will be doing that part will be in this video, and the next class will be having more of our derivative problem solving. We'll solve derivatives of functions and all that. Yes, we always discuss concepts about problems, so that is different matter. We'll surely do share the concept behind those problems, but this concept is very necessary. As you know, calculus is actually stands on a firm concept. So if you have a firm concept, you can get a very handy grip on this subject. Rather, unlike an algebra, you can solve a very huge number of problems and you can score a well amount of marks in these concerned competitive exams. But that's not the case with calculus. You can solve a very large number of problems and then still you will be lacking in the concepts of calculus. So I don't want that to happen, and that's why I am giving this overview. So this is a little brief discussion on differentiability and on continuity and the limits. So that would help, I think. Surely that would help. So what we have here is let y equals to fx is a continuous function. So that is said. So this is very important here, the term continuous. So we are given here that y equals to fx is a continuous function in open AB. So AB is an open interval, and then the derivative of fx. So this is a new term, derivative of fx at some x belonging to open AB, defined by f dash x or dy dx, and is defined as, so how is it defined? F dash x or dy dx equals to, so this is similar equivalent to f dash x equals to dy dx equals to limit of h tends to 0 f of x plus h minus fx over h. So this is a ratio, you can see very well. So this is a ratio. This ratio must converge, or this this limit must exist and is finite. If it's infinite, that's another case, then that's gives us a different story. But as we have here, so this limit must exist, this limit of this ratio, and this should be finite. Then we can say the derivative of fx exists and is finite. So we define the derivative of fx by f dash x or dy dx. This may be something else, this may be dx or dt, on which respect we are doing that. So so we'll talk about dx or dt, whatever happens to which I am taking the rate over. So that is on the next class, and here we'll see how a function is differentiable and all that. So moving on, so similar as to, so differentiability is nothing but the extended form of continuity. As we say in case of continuity, the LHL or the left hand limit must be same to the right hand limit and all. So this is the same with differentiability. So left hand differentiability must equal right hand differentiability, and then we can say that the function, then we can also invoke the derivative of fx if even if the derivative is not equal to the LHD or RHD, and we can always by brute force we can make that equal, and then the function would be differentiable very easily. We can also say, suppose on some point C, so we can make this exist and be equal to all both these two. So if these two are equal, we can always invoke a differentiability over that function, as we saw in case of continuity. So what we mean by left hand derivative and right hand derivative? So if we say about left hand derivative, say suppose at a point, let's say this is denoted by like this. Suppose at some point A, we are talking about the left hand derivative of f at some point. So we are discussing about the derivative of f at the point A, which belongs to obviously some interval, not that but some interval. We are taking an assumption, so that may be equal to a minus f is. So we know this all this, so we have already discussed. If you haven't understood that part, check out our previous video and we'll get the concept. So this is this, or it can be also written as and here is h greater than 0. So these are, we are discussing differentiability over the limit formulas. So this is the limit terms where we are discussing differentiability in the terms of limits. Similarly, we can say right hand derivative. You know this part is very easy. This would be only x tends to a plus, so I'm not writing that. And this part would be, these all are just manipulation. All these parts are equivalent, so nothing is different in this and this. Whatever the situation requires, we just do that and nothing else. So these all are same, actually equivalent. No need to worry about that. So that is the thing, that is the gist of this differentiability. And now I think these are very easy, quite easy to understand, and these limiting terms. So now we move to the graphical thing. That is a bit more tricky, I would say, and that you should know that properly so that you can solve your problems in the mind. And if you understand graphs very well, then you can solve the questions very easily in short time, in very short time. So suppose I have a function like this. So I have a function like this. So what does this, and now say this is some point A, this is x equals A. Okay, so we have a point x equals A, and now I want to check the differentiability of f at the point A. So how do you do that? So basically, going through those limit terms, I know that this is fa, and so I take a small interval of a, very small, that is h, and now I do. So this is f of a minus h, and this is fa, and this is f of a plus h. So you see what is happening here. So join this and also join this part. So what we get here, this part is f of a minus f of a minus h. Okay, and what is this part? This part is f of a plus h minus f of a, isn't that? So we have got it. And what does this mean? Now look at over this angle. Say suppose this angle is theta. So what we get theta, then if we apply tan theta, so tan theta would be this one. Okay, so now if I am going to, I'm going to take the whole thing, that is if tan theta is f of a plus h, I'm not taking the right hand side, left hand side, sorry. So both are similar, to be similar, nothing different. So in this case, if I make that limit h tends to 0, if now h approaches 0, so what would happen? Just think it graphically, try to imagine it in your mind. So this thing, this h is getting smaller and smaller, so now it would be here. So I'm making h smaller and smaller, so that, so now the tan theta part are getting this line is just rolling over. Check that this line would get once here and then once here. So finally the line would be approaching this line. So what is this? This is the tangent. So this is the tangent to this curve at the point A. So when we have said when we say about this limit term, we actually refer to the tangent at the point A of the function fx. So hope you have clearly got a view what I am trying to say here, graphical, or you can get graphical representation all in your textbooks. So that is very needy here. Now I am going to say about the relation of continuity and differentiability. So what could I say here is a differential function is always continuous. A differential function at a point, again I am saying, so this is point, say x equals a, and we have fa, this is y equals to fx, curve of y equals to fx. So if the tangent exists at this point at x equals to a, then this function that fx must be continuous at x equals a. So there is a very neat proof you can do in these limit terms. You can try yourself at your home, and you can get that fx is continuous at x equals a. So checking that continuity is not very difficult. What is difficult is to say that if the function is not differentiable at a, then is it continuous at x equals a? No, it isn't. If that function is continuous at x equals a, only then we have the differentiability of fx. So suppose say we don't have the continuity part. Now I don't say that fx is continuous. So you can take a function like, suppose say this is a function and this is fa, and again we have a function like this. So you can have a function. So this is continuous at a. We can always say that. And check. Okay, so check that this part may have its tangent. So at some point less than a, we can have a tangent, and also some point greater than a, we can have a tangent. So their tangent may exist, and their slope is also finite. The slope of this tangent, so there might exist, but still we aren't getting any tangent at this point. So can you say? So there no tangent is possible at this interval, since we don't have a continuous curve here, or the tangent wouldn't be finite in some other cases of non-derivative functions. So we cannot say if fx is continuous or not. So if a function is not, suppose say, okay, now I'm giving an example. Now not like this. So a function like this could be parallel to the y-axis. This is parallel to the y-axis. It could be the parallel to y-axis. Then what could we say? Does the tangent exist? Obviously not. The tangent with respect to x-axis doesn't exist. So even if this function is continuous, we are not getting a derivative of fx here. So this is not necessarily true. That is what I am trying to conclude here. So our conclusion is f is continuous, but that doesn't imply f is differentiable at some x equals a. So our conclusion is this, but the converse is true. If f is differentiable at some point x equals a, then it must be continuous at that point, as we saw. And one more thing is the converse of the above theorem, the converse of the previous theorem, what I said, that if f is differentiable implies f is continuous. So when we are given a function and we are told to check the differentiability and continuity, we can what a smart work would do, what a smart work would be is we check the differentiability of a, we get a derivative of f, and if that limit exists, we can say f is continuous. But when we are checking from this side, if f is continuous, we cannot necessarily say that f is differentiable. So that's my point. So what I said, just I am giving a counter example here. So what we have as a counter example, that is if some the counter example is that fx might exist which is continuous at some point a, and still it won't be differentiable at that point. So a very handy and very easy example what comes to our mind is at that point is mod of x. So what we have is fx equals mod x. We are all familiar with this function mod x. We know what it is. It is basically x when x greater than 0 for x equals 0, and minus x for x less than 0. So we all are familiar with the mod x function. And if we plot the graph of mod x, what would we get? Now I am plotting the graph of mod x. So we saw the negative part said fx equals to minus x. So that would be this one. So will not just get into my drawing. I am very bad at this part, and I admit, but just try to get a feel of this. So this is y equals x, and this is y equals to minus x. Let's just assume that this is y equals to minus x, and so y equals to minus x and this is y equals to x. So the total function is mod x, and we have x equals 0 here, and then fx is equals to 0. So isn't it continuous? Can you say? Yes, it is continuous. We can just by observing the function we can say yes, it is continuous, since there isn't any break in the graph of the function. So very easy to say this is continuous. Now I want to ask if that is differentiable. Now when I am asking about differentiability, we can always ask about differentiability at a point or at an interval. So I have to mention that interval or a point. So that is our point. So I have to mention. So I am checking. I said some positive a. So you check some for positive x equals a. Yes, it is continuous. Y equals to x is continuous. Y equals to x is differentiable, and so it is at some x equals a. It is always going to be continuous. So that is f of a equals a, and it is going to be differentiable. We all know that the derivative of f(x) equals a exists at some positive point, and also the same case with the negative part. But if I want to check the differentiability at x equals 0, now what would happen? Now you can refer it graphically, or I am doing it graphically. You can try it in the terms of limit as well. You can see if we try to see it graphically, what is the tangent of the, what is the slope of the tangent while it is in the negative portion. So we have a tangent. So basically the slope of the tangent is -1 in this negative part, and when it gets to the positive part, this is +1. So it's changing its sign just over an interval, over a small interval also. You take this very small interval, it's changing its sign. So that means that slope of the tangent is changing very rapidly in that interval. So the tangent must not exist in at that interval. At that very small neighborhood of 0, the slope of the tangent doesn't exist, which means the tangent is changing its sign very rapidly. So the tangent doesn't exist, and hence we can say the function isn't differentiable. And we can also do it in the terms of limit as well. We can check it that once you get the limit as -1, and in the other case, and in the other hand we'll get the limit as +1. So both the simultaneous different limits cannot exist, and we can always say that the function isn't differentiable, but still is continuous. So here are some basic properties. You can check your books and you might derive this by yourself. So that is, in some says f plus g, and at some and the derivative of plus g at some point c is f dash c plus g dash c, provided that those different derivatives exist and all are well defined. So check all these, you can know. So we have these properties here, basic properties. There are some more basic properties you can have a look over there, and then we'll be moving to the problem solving problems. We require these properties and in the next class as well. So what I'm trying to say here is look at the differential derivative of two composite functions, composition of two functions. So f is composed over g, that is f of g, and the different derivative at c is f dash of gc into g dash c, provided that the limit the derivative exists and is finite. So now I'm trying to give you an example. Say, so in general, when we talk about differentiability, we don't talk about the derivative at some point. When we talk about differentiability, we talk about the in general case for general x, for any general x, we talk about the differentiability of a function. But when we talk about derivative, we always talk about the derivative of that function at some particular point. So here you can take x, that is always a variable. So suppose fx is say sine of x, and then g of x is x squared. So what we have is f of g of x is sine of x squared. We have learned this in the class of functions, how to compose two functions, and we assume that their domains are well defined. We are not going to define those domains here, that would be a wastage of time here. I'm just giving an example. And then if we differentiate this function, what would happen? F dash this whole derivative we get. We are not checking the derivative at some particular point, but we are doing it in general. So what will we have? So just match these up. And first we have f dash of gc. So here we will have f dash of gx. So let's say some random point x. So what is f dash of gx? First check what is f dash of x. F dash of x is what is the derivative of sin s? Sin s derivative is cos s. You'll get to know all those formulas. You can check your books. So derivative of that is cos. Times x is cos x. But we don't have x here. In case of x, we have here x squared. So we'll get x squared. So x is acting as a dummy variable where we can put x squared. So gx is x squared when we put that x squared. So this part is done. And now we have g dash c. What is g dash x? G dash x is 2x. We all know that. So we are done with that. So next up we move to the last part of the video, the conclusion part of this class, that is mean value theorems. So we'll have this mean value theorem discussion on the application of derivative, but still I am covering this. If you want a more dedicated video to do the mean value theorems before we go to application of derivative, let us know in the comment section, or just email us. We'll put that email ID in the description. You can email us, or you can also write in the comment box what you want. And so MVT, mean value theorems, let's just discuss about that. So first up we have Lagrange's mean value theorem, which is also called LMVT. So the necessary conditions are f must be differentiable in open AB, and also then that actually implies f is continuous in AB, as we just learned. So then there exists some C belonging to AB such that f dash of C equals to fb minus fa over b minus a, the ratio of the different terms. So graphically saying, this is fb minus a, f of this is f of b minus f of a. So graphically saying, this is a curve, say y equals fx, and we have a b here. So a greater than b, a less than b, and a b may be greater than or less than fa. It doesn't matter. I just took a random curve here. So if b is here and fa is here. So what I'm trying to say is we can get a tangent which is parallel to this ratio of the terms. So check that the slope of this. So say this is theta. Then what we get if we extend this tangent over here, this would also make angle theta. So that is graphically very clear. We can have a different terms and then the tangent at that point, and that would be equal. So there is some C belonging to AB. So that C must be greater than A and always less than B. So check for these intervals, open intervals, where it is closed, where it is open, and where it is half closed, half open. So check. Be cautious about all those, since there are some loopholes in those parts. We can always ignore. Sometimes we may ignore those intervals and we end up getting some wrongs here, or we just end up getting wrong conclusions. So why do we do first LMBT and then we move to Rolle's mean value theorem, or Rolle's theorem, which gives us an added part. So I'm changing this. Now we have Rolle's theorem or Rolle's mean value theorem, whatever you say. So basically people call that Rolle's theorem, and that gives us an added part, an added condition. The third condition is FB equals FA, and what more is that, so since FB equals FA, if F has to continuous over the whole interval, then this also needs to be closed. So now the interval is closed and we have an added condition. So what do we get in this case? So very clearly, very easily we can say FB minus FA is equals 0, and so we get f dash C equals 0. That is basically when the curve has the curve is here and here is FA and FB. So both are same and there is a parallel line. The tangent is parallel to the x-axis. So we get a slope of 0. That is basically the thing with the Rolle's theorem. So both the theorems are useful, and just a modification of Lagrange's mean value theorem is the Rolle's theorem. We have the third added ones, and some extra mean value theorem. What we are doing here, there are more mean value theorems, but what is needed here is a tool you can use or may not use. So that says if two functions f g are differentiable in open AB and f and g are continuous in closed AB, then there exists some C belonging to AB such that the difference of these two functions is equal to the ratio of their derivatives. So check those order. FB minus FA over GB minus GA is equal to F dash C by G dash C. Some C where C belongs to this AB. So you might want to remember this theorem. This is a very useful tool. All these mean value theorems can be handy at some point. Even if you don't apply mean value theorems, sometimes the problems are solved easily in JEE or some WBJE. But if you remember all these theorems, that would be a plus point. That would be an X factor to the exam, to solving the problems. So if you want the full proof of all these mean value theorems and also Cauchy's mean value theorem, so this is CM video or Cauchy's mean value theorems. If you want proof of all these mean value theorems, let us know in the comment section, or you can email us. So I'll give you all the proofs of these mean value theorems. So next up we have a problem, the last problem of this class, that is on mean value theorem. So that says the number of real solutions to the equation 4 pi x plus 6 power x squared equals to 5 to the power x plus 5 to the power x squared is. The options are infinitely many, none, 1 and 2. So give it a try and be ready when you come back when you're ready. So I hope you have given it a wholehearted try, and now we are going to solve this. So what could we do? We just give it a hit and trial method and we put values of x equals 0, 1, 2 and so on, but that doesn't help us giving the answer, whole answer. So we must do it methodologically. We can also solve this algebraically by taking log and all that. You can do this algebraically, but since we are in MBT, we will always try to solve this by MBT, and that will be easier. Now what would I do here? So before going on to the next part, I want to say the derivative of fx equals ax. So as we will know, this is derivative is f dash x equals ax log a to the base e. So f dash x exists, and that is a power x log a to the base e. This is basically the case. So if we differentiate this whole equation, differentiating both sides, what will we get? We'd get 4 plus x log 4 plus 6x squared, and the derivative of x squared. So applying chain rule here. Chain rule of differentiation gives us equals 5x log 5 to the base e plus x squared 2x log 5 to the base e. So we get this. So this is quite easily differentiable, and I'm going to say in which part it is differentiable. This is actually overall, this is differentiable overall 1 over x, all is. But we are not going to see all the parts. We are just going to restrict ourselves. So let's define a function f of t equals t power x squared plus 10 minus t power x. Now we have defined a function f of t equals to t power x squared plus 10 minus t power x. Now check what is f4. Sorry, f of 6. So if when we put t equals 6 here, we get this part. Check it here. That is 6 power x squared plus 10 minus 6, that is 4 power x. So f of 6 equals, now again we put t equals 5. What would we get? T equals 5 gives us 5 power x squared plus 5 power x. So that is basically this, and we are given the condition here. So we can say f6 equals f5. So we are just equating the two parts and by defining a function. So we have got f6 equals f5. Now naturally what we are going to try to do here is, this is giving us some hints of Rolle's theorem. So we must try to apply Rolle's theorem in interval 5, 6. Now see if all the conditions are made by this function in this interval 5, 6 over the Rolle's theorem. So Rolle's theorem says that the function must be continuous in 5, 6, which is happening here, and f5 equals to f6, that is also true, that is also obtained, and also fx is differentiable in this f is, sorry, you can also say f dash exists in open f6, that is also true. You have seen here the derivative is very well and fine. So now we can apply Rolle's theorem. So by Rolle's theorem, we can see there exists some C, obviously belong to 5, 6, open 5, 6, such that f dash c equals 0. So keeping this point in mind, I am going to move up the solution over here. So better you write in this in your own copy or in your own, so if you don't lose the track of the solution. So we finally got some C, where C belongs to open 5, 6. We have obtained this. So what is f dash c? F dash c, we see fc was, fx was tx squared plus 10 minus t over x power x. Now some f dash x at some point c, this gives us, okay, f dash t is tx squared, I made a mistake, this is f of t, f dash t is, and this one here, and this would be minus, this is 10 minus t. So we know that the power, since observe that t is the variable here and not x, so x is behaving as a constant here, so we can say like if x is equals to x power n and f dash x is then So we just did the same process here. So t is a variable here and x is acting as a constant. So we can do f dash t is x squared t power x squared minus 1 minus x into 10 minus t power x minus 1. So f dash c, we have obtained as f dash c, which is equal to 0, which gives us basically c squared, not c, x squared, c x squared minus 1 minus x into 10 minus c power x minus 1 equals 0, and that gives us okay. So finally reached here. So this is a case of inequality, and I'm rubbing all this, using all. So we're finally taking this up. What we have? So now we are going to solve this. Now very clearly see the power of x here is much larger than the right hand side. So if we say we have x greater than 1, for x when x greater than 1, what would happen? So we can bring up an inequality here, bring up a very nice inequality here. We can say x squared of 6 c power x squared minus 1 is greater than x into c of x squared minus 1, correct? And that would be greater than x of c power x minus 1, isn't it? And that finally would be greater than x of 10 minus c x minus 1. So we just brought up an inequality, a very useful inequality here, and obviously the needed thing was x greater than 1. So when x greater than 1, this inequality holds. When you check that, you can say okay, so I'm removing x here and this is x greater than 1, so we can remove x here. That is the property of all those inequalities. So for x greater than 1, we can see this inequality doesn't hold. So we don't have any solution for x greater than 1, and we are giving the real solution. So we can check up to x where x is non-negative and x is less than 1. So x must belong to this interval. So it must belong to this interval, since if x is negative, this won't be equal. So checking that, so put x equals 0, or 0 gives us 2 here and 2 here. So 0 is a solution, 0 is a solution, and is it 1? Yes, 1 is also a solution. So this is also 10 and this is also 10. So both 0 and 1 are solution, and the correct answer is 2.